I didn't experience that. Even in the hospital, we brought in an iPod and we played Christian music played in my hospital room the whole time.
Yeah.
It was a peaceful. I had a peace the whole time that
Yeah.
I can't understand.
Yeah.
You know, that scripture that says, the peace that passes understanding. It was there, and I can't explain it.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Summer Show, a ministry of the Bellevue Church of Owensboro. And today in our episode, I interviewed Alicia Berry, one of our technical directors here at the church. And we went deep talking about a serious trauma that she experienced in life that was life-changing. This is an episode where you get to see how someone went through one of life's toughest experiences and experienced how faith would bring her through. Enjoy the show. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Alicia, you are one of the members of our church that have, over the years, inspired me the most. And that's why I wanted to ask you to be a part of the summer show. There are so many reasons why you have inspired me. I remember from the very beginning of me being a pastor here, almost 24 years ago, you were in high school, just in the early years of high school. And even then, you volunteered, you served, you were engaged, you were passionate about your relationship with the Lord. You went to college, you did the same when you were in college. And then when you came back to Owensboro, you dove in and you were active at the church and active in ministry, and you were just always at the epicenter of what God was doing here. And you are best known here at Bellevue for your key involvement in the tech and the creative ministries of our creative arts ministries, our worship ministries. So much of behind-the-scenes work for our Sunday services, as well as our big productions here. You're right there in the middle of it, even at the planning stage. And as a layperson, to be that involved has really been inspiring to watch. And of course, I get to know, as in ways that a lot of people don't, just how much of your fingerprints are on the key things that we do here that advance the gospel. And so you're best known for that. You're also very pivotal in many aspects of our children's ministries here that you've poured your life in and given your skills to. You're one of the smartest people I know, one of the most creative people I know, and technically savvy people. And I just want to say thank you. Your service here has always been just so phenomenal. A question that I have is, what motivates you to pour so much of your life into volunteering to advance the gospel message to the church?
Sure. More of this will come out later, but since 2010, I have been unemployed, and so I've had a lot more time to give, so that helps a lot. But I've always just gotten a sense of purpose, even in serving and helping others. Getting involved in the tech ministry was never something I thought would be something I would do. You know, growing up watching Wes Page and Andy Hodges back there, make it happen. I never thought that was going to be me. Yeah. But we built this new building. We moved in. We had these fancy moving colored lights that nobody knew what to do with. And my brother had gone to school for that. And so he trained me to do it, just thinking if anybody has questions, we could contact him or whatever. And I fell in love with it and have done it ever since. So, yeah.
Well, it's always been obvious that you loved the task of it and the challenges of problem solving. I've always seen you as a problem solver. You never seem to shrink from a problem. You dive right into it. But I've also seen in you a sense of joy when you see the results of ministry, when
Yeah.
you see lives changed or touched or people enjoy something.
Yeah.
What's that like for you?
You try not to take the reward for you because the reward is for God. It always is.
Yeah.
But to see that God can use you, He can use anybody when it's as simple as lighting a show or videos on a screen. Someone has to do those things for him. I mean, He uses us to do those things for Him. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see that it doesn't matter how small it is, whether you're the person serving coffee at the welcome center or the greeter at the door, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
So.
And it's one thing that's beautiful about it is there's so many things that people in the body of Christ, in the church, can do that in and of themselves, those things wouldn't make a difference.
Right.
Like if it was just standing alone.
Right.
But it's like an orchestra.
Yeah.
When you have every instrument playing together, it's a masterpiece.
Right.
And when you have the lighting and the greeting at the door and the teacher in the children's classroom and the person helping a guest fill out a visitor card and all of these, someone greeting and helping you park your car, all of those things together makes this masterpiece of love,
Right.
an extension of love. And it's really great when you can see someone go, hey, I had a part in it. I don't have to have all the credit for it,
Right.
but I had a part in it and God's getting the glory. It's
Yeah.
a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Like I said before, you're most often somewhere in the inner circle of our worship and arts ministry. What is it about being a part of a team like that you most enjoy?
Well, I went to school to be an elementary school teacher, and just having that collaborative work with others, even as a creative person, helps you be even more creative in ways you don't understand. Like you said, you can make a work of art on your own, but if you work as a team, God brings the talents He's given to everybody else together to work in ways you don't even would expect or
There's
understand.
a neat synergy of talents, abilities, experience.
Yeah, that brings out talents you may not even have known you had
Yeah.
when you work with others.
I know there's been times when you've worked with me behind the scenes to produce something and you'll have some suggestion or you'll have some idea and it's all of a sudden it's like opens up a whole new world. And that wouldn't happen if we were just doing something alone. There's
Right.
something about being a part of a team and that transcends yourself, but then also adds to yourself.
Right.
It's like I become more because I'm not just me.
Yeah.
I'm me in relationship to other people.
And they bring their own experiences and perspectives that you may not have to the table. Yeah.
And if we can be open to that,
Yeah.
it can be really powerful. Now, you just mentioned that you went to college to be a teacher,
Yes.
an elementary school teacher. And I remember when you came out of college and you got a great teaching job here in Owensboro, and I think you had a year of teaching. Was
Yep.
it a year or two? I think just a
I
year.
taught a year in Murray, and then I taught a year here in Davis County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And but then you're not a teacher now.
No.
And there was something back in 2007 that was life changing. You had something happened that changed your life in a pretty profound way.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
So it was the summer. I mean, school's out. I'm young, 25 years old, just bought my own house, wanted some extra cash for the summer to do some home improvement. So I went to work for my dad. He owns his own company, and it was first day on the job, and he's a steel fabricator, so he works with metal and machines and things like that. And I was working, cutting some holes in some chain for him, and somehow, still to this day,
it was a major
drill press.
like a
Yeah.
really huge drill press. I've
Right.
seen it.
Yeah. And one day we'll have to ask God, what exactly happened, but my ponytail got caught in it. And so I was scalped and spent the next 8 weeks in ICU in Louisville. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was such a rare and profound thing that happened that day. I know that the extent of your energy, your injury, when you said you were scalped, it basically meant it grabbed your hair.
It grabbed my hair.
And
it removed
removed essentially all the skin on your head from about under your eyes,
under my nose, right
under
here.
your nose,
yeah, down my
all
cheek.
the way to the back of your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was such a traumatic day. Do you remember that day?
Parts of it, just bits and pieces. I mean, they say I never lost consciousness, but it's amazing how God can use the brain to protect yourself in ways too. That there's parts of it I don't remember, and maybe there's reasons why I don't remember. But
like an internal human protection, from maybe even future continuous trauma.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that day. I remember being at the church. We were at the old church. In fact, this accident happened the day after we broke ground on this property that we're at now.
Yeah,
and
we were all out here the night before for the groundbreaking, and it was the next day.
And but I remember it was later in the afternoon of that Monday, and the church got a phone call, and it was your dad. And your dad was on the phone. They said, Oliver's on the phone. You need to talk to him. And your dad said, hey, he was very affected, and this was real bad. I hopped in the car, and I remember driving, realizing that this is something that that this was going to be dramatic. I knew I needed to be strong for you. And I got to the hospital, and saw your dad. Mm-hmm. And then I came in and I saw you in the ER, and I remember the injury and the extent of it, and I do remember one of the first things you said, and that was, "I can't believe this is happening." And you may not remember saying it, but that is just so indelible, that moment.
Yeah.
And you were not there long. You were not there long
No.
before your mom arrived, and we were with you, and then. Of course, they were working on you quickly.
Yeah.
They did a good job, and the care flight people, the helicopter came. I remember hearing the helicopter, and then they scooped you up and they took you to Louisville.
Yeah.
You were in Louisville. Which hospital was that?
It was U of L.
U of L. Mm-hmm. You were in Louisville, really fighting for your life for 2 months, right?
2 months, yeah.
What was it like? What do you remember from that?
One of the earlier memories that I have was meeting the surgeon it's been 14 years and he's still my surgeon.
Yeah.
And I remember, again, I don't remember knowing exactly how bad it was because I couldn't see it. Yeah. I don't remember feeling it.
And why couldn't you see it? Because you still had your eyes and all that. Why?
Right, but I couldn't see what had happened up here. No one showed me a mirror or anything for me to know.
But they also had sewed your eyelids shut, hadn't they, during that time?
Not yet, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe that was after the initial surgery in Louisville where they tried to put everything back on. But I remember meeting my surgeon and asking him if he could fix it. Just a simple question. Can we fix this?
Yeah.
And he was honest, and he said, I'm going to try. And I remember telling him that it was okay if he couldn't because God could.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just growing up in the church, it was just a natural reaction for me to think, as humans, we can't fix everything.
Yeah.
But he can.
Yeah.
So.
Your faith kicked in. That faith that had not been tested like that before kicked in. I think that's one of the reasons, Alicia, and I get emotional too when I think about this, why I have such love for you and your family is because you all, not in some fake way, but in a natural, just default way, you made a decision to just lean on faith because you knew that what else was there?
What else was there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot. People that will go through traumatic events that aren't believers. And it's
Yeah.
hard for me to fathom how they get through those things because it's so natural for me to just
Yeah.
lean on him.
Yeah.
So,
I want to explore that a little bit because honestly, you are somebody, and I know you experience the range of emotions. I know that you are somebody that have hurts and all of that, that those things are real for you. But you are someone, and it has amazed me that you are somebody who, in the struggle, I've never seen you just dive in despair.
yeah. I didn't experience that. Even in the hospital, we brought in an iPod and we played Christian music played in my hospital room the whole time.
Yeah.
It was a peaceful. I had a peace the whole time that
Yeah.
I can't understand.
Yeah.
You know, that scripture that says, you know, the peace that passes understanding. It was there, and I can't explain it. But it was a long 2 months, you know,
Yeah.
not knowing, talking about, you know, fighting for my life. My head was exposed to any bacteria or any infection that, you know, could have creeped in there.
Yeah.
They were doing leech therapy.
I remember
I mean,
that. Yeah.
leeches were involved, and
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, they still use those things?" And yeah, I
And
mean,
that was,
they did.
let's stop for a moment because somebody might go, they were doing leeches? You know, what's that all about?
Right.
Because I remember learning about that when I
Yeah.
would come to visit you, and there were open wounds. They had to
Yes.
keep it open. And but the leeches, if I remember correctly, weren't they to help stimulate capillaries?
Yeah, it was because this ear had been severed, and apparently ears are harder for plastic surgeons to recreate. So they wanted to try and save as much integrity of my ear as they could, and so they needed blood flow, obviously, to do that. And so because the scalp had been removed, a lot of the blood flow had been damaged in the process. So they were using the leeches to draw blood to the areas that they needed it, because that's what they do. They draw on your blood, but it got the blood supply to where they needed it to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't
And
that
it
amazing?
worked.
Yeah.
So
Things that we're all creeped out by and stuff
Right.
like that, and yet God can have us use. He provides these
he
things.
provides those
for,
things.
for help.
Yeah.
I remember a story, but I don't remember all the details. And I think we actually have brought this out before one other time when we shared your story. But there was a time I remember we had a team in Africa. Bellevue had a team in Africa, and
Yeah.
they were praying for you while you were in the hospital in Louisville.
Yeah.
And there was something going on, some kind of emotional or spiritual battle for you
Yeah.
at that time. And they were praying for you at the same time. And then there was some resolution. I don't.
Yeah. So Angus McKinley had some of our high school youth in Africa. And there was one night where, I don't know if it was all the pain medications I was on, but I had this one night where I dreamt that Satan was chasing me on an escalator. And I know
Right.
that sounds strange.
No.
But
Well, unless you're having the dream.
right, unless you're in the dream.
Yeah.
And I remember just making Mom read scripture all night long. You know, she'd read and she'd take a break, and I'd be like, keep reading. And then come to find out, this was nighttime here, but it was daytime in Africa. And it was the same day that they had heard about my accident and were praying for me there. Was the timing just
It was
correlated?
like exactly. I remember it was like
the same.
to the minute. Yeah.
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 And so they were praying you through, and you didn't even know.
Yeah, and I didn't know it.
So,
Yeah.
and you know, that's something that I think always needs to open us up to the fact that when the Lord prompts us to pray for
Yeah.
someone, we ought to pray
Yeah.
and know that God knows what he's doing to
Yeah.
include his people in prayer. Now, there is a really neat story about that 2-month fight there in Louisville. I remember, of course, for the most part, you had your eyes were sewn shut
Yeah.
and all of that. You couldn't see. You also had a trach, didn't you?
Yes.
And so you couldn't
I
talk,
couldn't talk.
which created problems in your care because you weren't able to communicate.
Right.
And then one day you start doing something and everybody's like, what's going on? And you had a friend in the room.
In the waiting room.
In the waiting room that ended up knowing what you were doing.
Yeah.
And it turned the tide on a lot of things. What
Yeah.
was that
so
about?
when they reattached my scalp, they sewed my eyes shut to just keep muscle movement and keep everything kind of stable. And then a lot of my surgeries, I was face down, so they had to put a trach in to open my airways and everything. So I come out of surgery and I can't see and I can't talk. And so my hand just starts going. And my mom knew what I was doing, and so she went running to the waiting room to see if she could find anybody that had grown up in the youth group with me, because we had learned sign language as youth here at Bellevue. We had a deaf lady here, and Kim Page and Lisa McFarland had learned enough sign to communicate with her. And as teenagers, we thought that was cool, and so we learned it, and then we did interpretive sign to worship songs and that kind of thing, and continued on doing that in college. And so I just started signing.
And you were mostly signing the alphabet, weren't
right.
you?
I was
so
just
you're spelling
spelling
out words.
things at the time. And so Deborah Lanham happened to be in the waiting room. That was
And
the first
she was a dear
person-
friend of yours, went to college
Yes.
with you, right?
Yeah. And happened to have learned that along with us. And so my mom, she was the first one she saw, and she
was a teacher too.
was a teacher.
And so
Yeah.
she was off that summer.
Right.
And she just camped out with you.
She just kinda
became
hung
your
out
interpreter
and-
for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a real good friendship too,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And to see how God placed sign in my life all those years ago, not knowing I would need it in that moment, is
And I've
also very
calculated the
neat.
time. It was 10 years before
Yeah.
that you had learned that.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that there are times that we're learning something and we think it's just, or we go and we have an experience and we think maybe even the experience is bad or good or whatever, and we just think it's not going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
But then someday something happens, God calls that forth, and
Yeah.
it becomes valuable. So how valuable was it to learn that sign language? Of course, you got to connect with people.
Right.
So it had to be emotionally encouraging. But did it help with the treatment too, just being able to communicate with your doctors?
Yeah, it did. There was even a resident that kind of picked up a little bit of the sign while they were there. She would be the one to come in, and they had taken a vein from my arm and placed it in my head, and they came in every morning to do an ultrasound on that vein to make sure it hadn't, clotted shut, which it did many a days. And she had picked up some of the sign and was able to know what I was saying. So, yeah. It was helpful to be able to communicate when you're in such a traumatic experience like that,
Right.
and to have your senses taken away from you at the same time.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know what my hospital room looked like. I didn't really know where I was.
Right.
I knew I was in a hospital, but not to know what your surroundings look like, and then to know they're doing leech therapy on you. I didn't see them. I didn't feel them. I didn't
Right,
know.
right.
So just being able to sign and communicate was very important.
Yeah. What was it like? You mentioned about how you leaned on your faith in that. Did you sense the presence of God, or did you feel far from God in the midst of that time?
The 2 months in the hospital, I just felt that he was there in the moment. Like I said, it was peaceful, even in the midst of that chaotic ICU. I'm in trauma ICU, so it's not just chaotic in my room. It's chaos all over the floor for all the other patients that were in trauma ICU in Louisville. So it was a chaotic floor. And playing the worship music, we would have nurses come in and take their breaks in my room because it just felt different. But then after any big situation like that, you come back home
Mm-hmm.
and life goes on for everybody else.
And it sinks in.
And it sinks in that, oh, this is now different. And
Yeah.
trying to wrap your mind around what life is going to look like.
Yeah. Because it
Yeah.
wasn't just the 2 months. Your life would be very different if it was a 2, 3, or 5 month recovery
Yeah.
from. This wasn't a broken arm that
Yeah.
healed, and then every time it storms, you
You
feel
feel
achy.
it. Right.
This changed your life. You've had continuous surgeries for the last 14 years. You just recently had a surgery a few
Right.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
They're constantly seeking to still address this issue
Yeah.
and improve the circumstance.
Right.
It changed what you could do with working
Yeah.
in your career and just a number of
Yeah.
things. Really, it seems we've talked so much about the trauma, but no doubt the greatest hurdles in your life have been after the fact.
Yeah.
What's that journey
So-
been like?
I came home, obviously took a year off from teaching because I was healing.
Yeah.
But then I went back and taught for 2 years. And then, because we needed this all to heal and settle before they could even think about any reconstruction or improvement upon
Right.
the situation. So we started reconstruction, and the whole goal, and it's really funny now in hindsight to look back that I had a patch of hair in the back that was never removed in the accident, and then the other hair that survived was where the leeches were, because they supplied enough blood flow for hair to grow back there. So then the rest of my scalp was just scar tissue. I couldn't wear a wig because the scar tissue was so thin, it broke the scar tissue down. So the goal has been to try and take those 2 patches of hair, which they considered viable skin, and stretch them to cover the scar tissue, to replace the scar tissue, to cover my scalp with skin.
Yeah.
And it's a slow process. They have to stretch it. They put tissue expanders under the scalp and slowly stretch the skin so they can move it. So it's a slow process, which
Yeah.
is why we're 14 years in and not finished
Right.
with it. So I know this is a term that everybody has used in the last year, my new normal, but that became my new normal. I couldn't
Yeah.
teach because we were doing so many surgeries and having open wounds. I couldn't be around a bunch of
Sick kids or
kids
anything,
and
yeah.
that kind of situation. So couldn't go back to teaching. And so this creative team at church almost became, it was my outlet for not just sitting at home and dwelling upon what had happened. It gave me something to do. It gave me a way to be around others and serve, and gave me a purpose at the
Yeah.
time.
Well, and your significance has, in terms of impact and stuff, in ways that are measurable, it really grew in this
Yeah.
experience. In so many ways, the kind of impacts, though it would be different impacts, they were merely different. You were still having huge impact with your life, even though you couldn't be a teacher.
Right.
You were translating and having just as much impact by impacting thousands of people over the course of any year here through the ministries that we have here.
Yeah.
And the core impact that you've had.
Yeah.
Often it is the crucible experiences of life that produce the most powerful opportunities. Would you say that that the open doors, let me see, would you say that there's truth in that for you?
Yeah.
And how so?
I have done things in the last 14 years that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do had I still been a school teacher. Like, I probably would have served here as I have growing up at church, but not to the extent that I do now, because I would have had a career doing other things, and there's other things that have been brought into my life in the last 5 years that I wouldn't trade for anything that I wouldn't have had if this experience hadn't happened. You know,
Sure.
hindsight's always 20/20, but things that I never thought God was going to, roads God has taken me down that wouldn't have been feasible
Right.
had the accident not happened. And
Yeah.
so God will open those doors. He'll close doors, you know, that we may not understand at the time,
Yeah.
but he has a plan in all those things.
You know, you've always been somebody that cared for people. I mean, I've always seen that. But have you found, I know that a lot of people find that when they go through something traumatic that is hard and involves loss in their own life, that a lot of times that can increase their sense of feeling for others and what other people go through. Is that your experience?
Yeah, my trauma is kind of, it's not really something that you can compare to other people.
No.
It's very,
So unique.
So unique.
Yeah.
But I feel empathy for people that go through any type of experience that you want to sit back and go, God, why me? But we don't know. I mean, those are going to be questions we'll ask him someday but we impact, even just living your daily life in your new situation can impact people that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And there's something, and that's something that I know because I've had conversations with people about your impact in their life when you haven't been in the room, and your story, your faith has birthed faith in so many other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we want to say to other people is that when they go through tough times, the tough times not just for them to grow.
Yeah.
It's for other people to grow too.
And sometimes I think people think, oh, I've got to get up and tell my testimony for it to have an impact on others, when really just going about your daily life in your new situation, leaning on God in those situations, other people see that and it impacts them without you having to get up and tell your testimony, be a public speaker or whatever.
Right.
That may be. So.
Well, I want to shift gears for just a moment. And we've gotten real heavy for a while, but I want to do something just kind of fun and light. A part of the summer show is I always like to have a rapid fire session at the end where we just ask some questions about favorite things and just sometimes silly stuff as well, and just to get to know you a little bit better. So I haven't prepared you for these, so we'll see what you have. Favorite pet?
Favorite pet?
Pet.
That's hard. Growing up, I've had so many pets.
Really? Okay.
Grown up with animals. But, oh gosh. I would have to say I have a cat named Hope.
Okay.
And this is an interesting story.
Oh.
So we found Hope at my dad's work. She had been hit by a car. They found her. Didn't think she'd make it through the day, but she did. And so I come home. This was before my accident. I'm still teaching here in town. And I come home and we rush her to the vet and do blood transfusions on her.
Oh, wow.
And she survives. And then my accident happens. Well, and we get home with her and my mom's like, what are we going to name her? And I named her Hope because she had gone through this traumatic situation as this tiny little kitten and she survived. And so that's what we named her. And then my accident happens. And it's funny. It was her left ear and her left eye. Like, she has scars on her head where the hair never grew back.
Oh, wow.
And we match. And she's 15 years. We found her a year before my accident. So she's 15. She's still here with me.
She's still with you?
She's still with me. So, yeah.
Alicia, you totally surprised me. I thought because you've always had a dog, I thought you was going to be a dog. And in fact, I saw your dog and was petting your dog just 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's going to be dog. This is such an easy question. And I didn't even know this story.
Yeah.
So what a treat. Now, okay, that was good. It's inspiring. If you had a quiet, rainy day all to yourself, would you opt for a good book or a movie on TV?
Movie.
A movie on TV. Okay. Favorite restaurant in Owensboro?
Oh, Real Hacienda.
Real Hacienda. Of all the cars you've owned, and I crafted this for you because it seems like you have a new car every 2 years. Of all the cars you've owned, which did you most like to drive?
It was probably my second car. I was 17. I got a little like Z71 little sports
okay.
car. Yeah.
Okay. All right. If you had a choice of movie, would it be drama or comedy?
Drama.
Drama.
Yeah.
Okay. You're like me. That's
Yeah.
who I am.
I like those drama, Law and Order, cop shows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Well, Alicia, this has been a productive time.
Yeah.
And a real inspiration. And I think your story is going to really speak to the hearts of so many.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.